Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Speckled Red Knits. I have no idea what episode this is, and it has been a while since I podcasted. I think we finally have the podcast done from a few months ago as of today, and I just need to publish it, so I have no idea when this one will go out. But the point is, we're here. I'm here. I have stuff to show you. I have some sewing to show you. That doesn't happen very often. So I don't know. Let's jump in. In my introduction, for a long time, I used to say this was a podcast about knitting and sewing, but I never showed anything that I've sewn. Not today. We're going to start off with this beautiful little lady behind me. And it is a giant quilt that I made for one specific reason, to be used for picnics at Blossom. And it has not been to a Blossom picnic this summer. So let me explain what Blossom is. So Blossom is an outdoor concert venue. It's a summer home of the Cleveland Orchestra. And they just do concerts all summer. And you can go and sit under like the pavilion, but you can also go and sit on the lawn, which is like this huge hill behind the pavilion. And you can like sit and have a picnic, and it's wonderful. And you're allowed to bring in whatever you want. You can bring in like a full wagon of like food and drink, and it's great. It's wonderful. I am so good at packing picnics for Blossom. Like, honestly, one of the best things that I know how to do. Like, I know how to do a lot, but that is one of the best things I can do. And so I wanted a picnic blanket that I made to take to Blossom. So a little bit about this quilt. As you can see, she's pretty big. I was not going based on a pattern. I saw someone made a 9-patch quilt, which is what this, what the quilt block is. It's a 9-patch. So like every little square has 9 little patches, and you don't actually sew 9 patches together. There's like a way you do it with strips. So it's not like as time consuming as it looks. So I wasn't following a pattern. I followed someone's measurements to do a 9-patch block. And I kind of just bought a bunch of fabric that I thought looked good together. So the vibe I was going for with this quilt was like camp, like summer camp, just like fun and like whimsical, and just like the colors of like summer camp. I don't know. That is like, I've tried to like curate that atmosphere in a lot of things that I've been making lately, probably because it's summer. Also, when we were filming White Noise, we filmed at a Boy Scout camp, and I just love the vibes of camp. I was a Girl Scout back in the day, and it's just like, I don't know, camp is so much fun. Like, camp in any capacity is so much fun. It's just like synonymous with summer and like having no responsibilities, and that's the vibe I was going for. Also, like, camp meets Wes Anderson movie, so basically Moonrise Kingdom. But the point is, I just bought a ton of fabric that I thought like fit that theme. Didn't know how big it would actually be. I just like used all the fabric, made all the like 9-patch squares, and then laid it out. And so I laid it out, and I'm like, you know what? I think it needs to be a little bit bigger for a picnic blanket to like accommodate a lot of people. So I added in 60 more squares. And again, I wasn't following a pattern, so I had like no size reference. Like I wasn't like following a pattern that said, buy this much fabric and make these many squares and like you'll get a quilt that's this big. I was just like making it up, because like a 9 patches, like it's a pretty classic quilt square. So you don't like really need to follow a pattern to make that. So had no idea how big I was making it. I did accidentally make a king-sized quilt, which is huge. So it's like draped a couple of times over this. It's big. And I didn't know how big I made it until after I quilted it. And so I quilted it on my machine at home, like my home sewing machine that does not really have much space. Like, it's not like really a quilting sewing machine. So some quilting sewing machines have like more space between like the you know, like the arm is longer between like where the machine, all of the things that makes it a machine exist, and where the actual like foot and needle are. So there's not a lot of space. And I always said that if I made like anything bigger than a throw size quilt, I would send it off to get long arm quilted because I hate quilting. I hate that part of it. And it's hard. Like when you don't have a machine that's like really meant for that to like get the quilt through it, because you have to like roll up the sides and like shove it through. And I just like, it's not fun. So I'm glad I didn't know how big I made it until after I quilted it, because I definitely think I would have like not quilted it myself if I had known that. But I'm not very big on like the super detailed, like intricate quilting. If I were like paying someone to do it on a long arm, maybe I would like it. But like just me for myself, I think all I really did was I just like crossed each square. Like I did a diagonal line through each row and just did that. And I actually haven't washed it yet, so I don't know what it'll look like all crinkled up, but I think it'll be fine and it'll be cute and it'll be good. But yes, it is a huge quilt. When you're just like looking at it lay down on the floor, they don't look that big until you put them on a bed and you're like, wow, I made a huge quilt. So I did not mean for it to be this big, but here it is. And it's adorable. And I've never made something that I've loved this much. Like everything about it is, to me, is just perfect. Like the every like piece of fabric I picked out. I had a lot of things from my stash that I pulled in, and I just think the colors are so cute. And the backing fabric was it was a journey because I had bought fabric for the back, and then I cut it too short because I thought I knew what size quilt I had made, and clearly I didn't. So I cut it too short, and then I bought more to fix it, and it wasn't going to like look good because it was gingham, and like the pattern was not matching up at all. And so I like scrapped that, and then I bought this super cute cotton and steel I can't think of what I think. You know what? I think the pattern collection was called SS Bluebird, and they were a bunch of like Japanese prints that were all done in blues. And I'm so glad the first fabric didn't work out because I think this is so much cuter. I hope you can see it in the back peeking out there. Just the colors of this are so good. It makes me so happy to look at it. I guess any other notes I have are that I did hand stitch the binding down. I've machine stitched binding before, and I'm so unhappy with the way it looks. And because I don't quilt that often, maybe if I quilted more, I would just like want to machine stitch stuff on to get through quilts faster. But for me, like I don't make quilts that often, so I don't mind spending the time doing like stitching it down. And also one of the things that I don't like about quilting is that it's hard to be social when you're quilting. Like when you're knitting, you can do that anywhere and you can just like pick it up and like be around people. But with quilting, you have to like be at your machine, and your machine is loud, and it's, kind of like an independent task. So actually like hand stitching the binding down, I always find really nice because I can, like take it with me and do it other places. And at the time when I was making this at work, I had a lot of online meetings. And so I would stitch the binding down during meetings, not the place that I currently work. In case anyone ever sees this, not the place I'm currently employed at. But yeah, I really don't mind doing like the binding. It's like very meditative, and it's just like it's so nice to be basically done with a quilt and get to spend a little bit more time with it, like stitching the binding down. Anyway, I'm just gonna look at her one more time. She's gorgeous. I love it so much. Yeah, she's perfect. She'll go to Blossom one day. Blossom this year was just, I don't know. It wasn't like a great concert season. Like I think the only like big work they did was the Pines of Rome, which is still good. But usually at Blossom they do like more crowd pleasing classical music bits. And this summer it just like wasn't great. It was also kind of scaled back, I think, because they weren't sure like what was going on with the pandemic when they planned it, because they announced Blossom in the winter. So I think we were still like pretty the pandemic was still very aggressive, like at that point. So I think they just like didn't want to do too much because they weren't sure if it was going to get canceled. So this time next year, she'll have been used, she'll have been loved, she'll have been picnicked upon, and I won't have to like be trying to get it done under a wire because I probably finished this mid-July and Blossom starts at the beginning of July. So I was definitely like putting some pressure on myself to get it done. But this way, she'll be ready for us when the time comes. Don't know why I keep calling it a she. It's a thing. Next thing, it's been a minute since I've podcasted, so I do have a lot of things that I've finished. First things first, that Loba Pesa sweater that I was working on last time, didn't knit another stitch on it because I left it at the studio and just never picked it up each time I was here. So that has not been knit on at all. It should have been a finished object. I just wanted to clear the air because I have like other sweaters that I'm going to show you that I finished that like I should have finished that one first and it might not make any sense. But yes, haven't knit on that at all. And now it's summertime. I don't know. I lose my knitting motivation around May because it's like up until April, because it does stay kind of cold in Cleveland up until like through April. Even like beginning of May, it's still like pretty cool. Like I have motivation to finish sweaters because I could wear them like now. But like once May hits, it's like, what's the point? You know, I can't, if I finish it, so what? I can't wear it until October. And even October, like I feel like summertime has moved from like July through October in Cleveland. Like it just stays hot later and it doesn't warm up as quickly. Like June, it wasn't really that warm either. But the point is that usually my knitting motivation like drops off in the summer. And yeah, it kind of did, which is why I made that quote. I feel like I'm going to keep that in mind, that summertime might be when I actually quilt, which is good because I have like a pile of quilts I need to finish. I might just like make that switch where I don't like put as much pressure on myself to knit in the summer and I just quilt instead because that like flows more. Anyway, the point is I still have sweaters to show you because it hasn't just been summertime since the last time I podcasted. There was still like some April and May in there. So the first thing that I finished that still has all of its ends not woven in and all of the sleeve markers on it is this cute little sweater that I had the yarn for a long time. And you might be saying, Julianne, that looks a little small. Perhaps it does, but I haven't blocked it yet. So I'm confident that it's going to block out and be bigger. So this yarn was the yarn that Espace Tricot made. And it's no longer Espace Tricot. That's the yarn store. And then the yarn company is now called Sonder Yarn Co. But when I bought it, it was Espace Tricot yarn. So it's their Sunday morning DK weight yarn. And it's the colors. I want to say this was called Sunday Morning. And the stripe was called Sweet Tea. So I had bought a bunch of this yarn as soon as it came out, like the very day it came out. I was actually the first one that bought it because I was stalking their website and they sent me a note saying, you're the first one to buy this. How did you find it? Like we didn't even announce it because you couldn't actually find it on their website. You had to search for it. Like you couldn't just like click into the yarn. You had to search for it. So I don't know what point I was trying to illustrate other than I really wanted this yarn. So anyway, so I bought a bunch of yarn, and I think I talked about this in the last episode. I had bought 2 sweaters quantities, so like 4 of one color and then 1 of another color, so that each sweater's quantity could be like a colorwork sweater. And so the pinks I had bought, and I thought they were going to be different enough to do colorwork with, and I just don't think that they were. So let me spin this around because actually this is the front, not that it makes any difference. But so Tracy from the Grocery Girls knit a Cozy Classic Raglan where she added stripes to it. And I already had the Cozy Classic Raglan pattern. And I was just so tired of seeing this yarn in my stash because I bought it like 2 years ago. And I'm like, you know what? I feel like these colors like would be really good together in a striped sweater because it would just be really subtle and like a nice detail. Because like doing anything color work with it wasn't going to work. It wasn't going to be like high enough contrast to like be worth it, I don't think. So I decided to just do that. So this is a Cozy Classic Raglan pattern. And I've knit this before. It's supposed to be knit with mohair and fingering weight held together, but that just makes DK. So the yarn was a DK weight, so I didn't need to hold anything with it. And yeah, I'm super excited to wear this. I think this will look kind of, it's like a more professional sweater. Like I could put a collared shirt underneath it. I'm laughing when I say that because I work remotely, and quite frankly, as much as I would like to believe that I am putting in the same amount of effort in my professional appearance as I would be if I were going into an office, I'm not. Like, I sometimes don't even put on makeup because, like, what's the point? I'm behind a webcam. Anyway, if I am in a situation where I need to look more professional, I feel like this bad boy would be perfect. I'm really sorry I said bad boy. I think this sweater would be perfect. And yeah, I guess I should block it. I finished this maybe 3 weeks ago and I just didn't do anything with it. Because like that's my issue with knitting in the summer is like I should have blocked this and woven in the ends and like taken all the markers out immediately. But it's like in the summertime, like what's the point? I can't wear this for a couple more months. So anyway, I am really happy with it. I don't think I made any modifications. I've knit the Cozy Classic Raglan before with mohair and it turned out lovely. So I'm excited to get to wear this in the wintertime. I think it's going to get a lot of use. And the yarn really like softens up and blooms quite a bit because I think I showed a sweater on the last episode where I had knit with this yarn and I had actually blocked that sweater. Ironically, didn't wear it last year. But yeah, I'm super happy with this. Because I was just like adding in the stripes, I didn't totally know how to make them jogless. So I don't know. I'm looking at the back. I don't think it looks that bad. Let me show it to you again. It's like down this seam. Maybe you can see it a little bit, but it's going to block out. And like, honestly, who cares? Anyway, yes, I'm so glad to have knit something with this yarn because it had just been like sitting around for such a long time. And I am not a person that enjoys like having a lot of yarn around. Up until I graduated college, like I was on a pretty tight knitting budget and I would just like buy yarn for each pattern. And I miss that. Like I miss really being able to like settle into a pattern and like very carefully choosing your yarn for the pattern and like going through a lot of considerations. So I'm trying to get back there. I'm really trying to knit through my stash, but now I have the problem of like having too many like leftover bits, which is like, you know, I'm not like continuing to buy yarn. It's just that there's no way to knit and not have leftover yarn. Like it's very difficult to like buy the perfect amount of yarn for your project. So now I'm running into the problem where I am actually knitting through a lot of my stash, but I still have a lot of leftover yarn bits that are making it appear larger than it is. So I don't know. Maybe I need to knit a blanket or something with all of my ends because I have a lot and it's kind of bothering me. So yes, super happy to have another sweaters quantity out of my stash and into a sweater. My next finished object, you might say, Julianne, I've seen you knit that sweater before. You would be right. This is the Ingalls. I was thinking of Little House on the Prairie because Laura Ingalls. I don't actually know if that's why she named it that. She being Caitlin Hunter, the person that wrote this pattern, is the Ingalls sweater. So I knit this maybe 2 years ago. and I knit it in Harrisville tweed. It was like the yarn line that they did that was like breed specific. I knit it in like their beige color and then white for the snowflakes. And it's like low contrast. And I typically don't knit a lot of sweaters with that much ease, but I did for that sweater and it turned out like perfectly. I think my issue with ease is that if you're knitting it with a superwashed yarn, it can look really slouchy. But if you're knitting it with a more structured yarn, like it kind of like just floats away from your body like very perfectly. So I loved it in that sweater, and that sweater fit like so perfectly, and I wore it all the time. I wore it on a trip that I took like everywhere. And so I wanted to knit another one that was more like charcoal. So I did. And sadly, I did try this on recently and it's not fitting great. And I don't know why, but it's not. I knit the same size and I knit it with the same yarn as I did the last one. And so I'm like really confused why it's fitting differently, because I measured my other one before I knit this and like made sure I was knitting the same size, like knit it to the same proportion, and it's just fitting differently. And I'm wondering if like it's possible that the other one doesn't fit that way anymore either. I think it might just be a little bit too big. Yeah, I don't know. It's just not fitting the way the other one does. And I don't know. Like, I don't know if it needs to be bigger, like if I need to block it and try and stretch it, or if it is just too big. Because with ease, I feel like if you add so much ease, it will just like drape better. And by ease, I'm meaning like extra space, like making something bigger than your body is. So I don't know, like holding it up, I feel like that's probably not the problem. The sleeves are too short. I do know that much. Yeah, the sleeves aren't working. They need to be a little bit longer. I feel like when I blocked it, I hadn't tried it on, so I wasn't like trying to stretch it or anything. So maybe I just need to block it again and like really stretch her. Give her a good stretcheroo. But yeah. The point is that I knit the sweater again, and for some reason it turned out differently, but I still love it. I love the contrast because my other one is so low contrast and this one is very high contrast. And I finally learned, because with I've knit so much color work, but I also don't hold the yarn the way you're supposed to, like on your fingers. When I knit color work, I just pick each one up and put one down. And so when people talk about like knitting with color dominance, I'm like, that doesn't apply to me because I don't knit that way. When I knit color work, actually, it still does matter. And even if you're knitting the way I am, you can still make sure that you're doing color dominance, which is basically like making sure that the yarn that is in the like is dominant in the color pattern. So that would be the white, like this like gray, this like black gray color is the background. Making sure that it's like the way the floats work in the back. It's a way to hold your yarn so that the floats for the yarn that is the contrasting color are shorter, so that the stitches pop out more. And it's very subtle, but with something like this, the contrast is so high that you're going to notice if you don't do that. Like with other things, it just like gets mixed in and I feel like you can't tell as much. But with this, I could tell that I wasn't doing it correctly, and I learned how to do it the right way, and now I'll always do it the right way. But I do really like this sweater, and I'm going to figure out how to make it like fit me better, because this is just going to be like great in the wintertime. Honestly, like I love the summer, love a summer moment, but I love my winter and fall uniform, which is jeans and my blendstone boots and a sweater. And I just like love not having to think about what I'm wearing or what I'm going to wear. And also I get so many compliments during that season because people say, wow, your sweater's amazing. I say, oh my gosh, thank you. I made it. Shock, gasp. And yeah, I want this to be a sweater that people say, wow, that's amazing too. So I'm going to figure it out. I think, like I said, this is the Ingle sweater by Caitlin Hunter. It's been out for a while. The sweater pattern does call for like a ton of ease, like 20 inches of ease. I definitely didn't knit it with 20 inches of ease. I don't think anyone wants to, quite frankly. And I knit it with Harrisville. It was their sheer base. I don't think they have it anymore. It's a they say it's a DK weight, but it's definitely more. It's like between a DK and a sport. It's definitely a lighter DK, but it's just like a woolen spun, lovely, like very specific breed that goes into the yarn. And yeah, I love it. And I'm excited to have like 2 contrasting sweaters. I think I'm actually going to bring this one with me on a trip that I'm going on in just a couple weeks, which is ironically the same trip. It's a very similar trip to the last one I took where I wore her sister, my low contrast one. So I'm excited to like have pictures in a lot of the same places and basically the same sweater, but a little bit different. So yay, she's done. She's been done for a while. Okay, so the next thing I have to show you, super boring. It's a little pair of socks. I didn't show you when I bought the yarn for these socks because it was a while ago and I wanted to knit the socks when I bought the yarn. The yarn is the Mondim sock yarn by Retrosaria, which is a Portuguese yarn company. And all of their yarns are like very local to Portugal. They like kind of blew up maybe 4 years ago. I would like to say that I knew about them before that. And I actually went to the shop when I studied abroad. I went to Lisbon when I studied abroad and I went to the shop. And a lot of the yarns are very affordable. And they're like not super washed. They're all breed specific. And I think Mondim either means sock in Portuguese or Mondim is the name of a town where a lot of socks used to be produced. But that's the name of their sock base. And it's just like a really sturdy wool. There's no like, what am I thinking of? There's no nylon in it. And I've actually found that the very few pairs of socks that I have that are knit with socks that don't have like knit with non-superwashed sock yarns, I actually love, and I like them more because I find that the superwash socks like tend to stretch out a little bit, and they never really go back to like their original shape. So I have like one pair that I knit in Mondim that I kind of felted on accident that I loved, and I wore them all the time. And so I think I'm just going to start knitting socks with more non-superwashed yarn because I just really like the socks that they make better. They're more structured and they just like hold their shape longer. I have like a lot of like skeins of sock yarn that I've bought just because they were beautiful skeins. And you know, I always say, oh, I'll just knit socks with them if I can't think of anything else to knit with. So I think I'm going to try and like get through all of those skeins. And then I'm really going to like knit a lot of socks that are non-superwash because I just like them so much more. I don't know what the colorway was in Mondim. They don't have like names for them. They're usually numbers, but it's like this really lovely like newsprinty like white and black. Just like really classic. And the heels and toes are just like a knit picks yarn. I definitely could have been like more fun with the heels and toes, but this was just what I had handy when I was making these. They actually have, there's a Mondim colorway that's like hot pink, which I love using a hot pink pop. You might like see that in my quilt. There's a print that's white with like hand-drawn hot pink stars that I just love so much. I love a hot pink moment. And I could have done that. I have more of this yarn left over, so I definitely could knit another pair where I like make them a little bit more fun. But sometimes it's nice just to have like a more neutral pair of socks to wear because I always wear them. I wear them with my Blundstones and my jeans in the winter, and I usually like cuff my jeans a little bit so you can't see my socks. And sometimes you just want like something that's a little bit more like understated, that's not just like this speckled crazy yarn. Not that I often want that, but when you need to be more mature, I suppose. Um, these will be the socks for that. This is actually, I was going to say this is a sock pattern that I always knit, and it is, but something fun that I did was I knit the body and the like the foot area in like a 3x1 rib. So hopefully they'll like not stretch out so much because of the ribbing. I actually think I need to cast on fewer stitches because I did them in ribbing, because the ribbing will like stretch and like stick to your foot more. So we'll see if I need to like adjust the amount of stitches that I knit if I knit them in ribbing. But my point, like my goal, is to make socks that just stay on my feet and fit my feet better, because I find so many of my superwash socks just like are like floppy sacks at the end of the day. So I'm hoping this is a solution to my problems. So very exciting. For this next segment, I have a whopping 1 work in progress to show you. And I want to take you all back on a little journey. So this time last year, I was getting ready to go on a trip, the first trip that I had gone on since COVID. And I was like knitting and making myself a new wardrobe for it, because that's like a thing that we do when we go on trips, right? Is that we want a whole new wardrobe. But it's worse if you're someone that like makes your clothing, because you're like, oh, I need a new wardrobe, but also I need to make it, because the things that I want are things that I have to make. And so I was like furiously making things. I made so many things. I think I made 2 sweaters to take. I made a half and half triangle wrap to take, which is a ton of knitting. And I made a quilt coat, and I like wanted to make more, but I was also working on a movie at the time and had no free time. So I don't know why I had like set this like impossible goal for myself. Anyway, I knit this sweater that I had wanted to knit forever. It was like a sweatshirt style pattern that was in a Lana magazine. And I'm like, you know what? I'm finally going to knit it for this trip. I think a gray sweater would be so versatile when I'm traveling. And I knit it, and I like finished it under the gun. I knit it in this beautiful Barrett Wool & Co., their worsted weight yarn, this like warm gray. I finished it under the gun. I blocked it, and I took it with me with the ends not even woven in yet. Like, that's how quick, like that's the deadline that I gave myself for it. I just finished it, and it was a lot of knitting. It had like a split hem, so it was taking up a lot of space in my suitcase. And I wish I would have tried it on before I left, because I would have realized that it did not fit at all. And I think I talked about it. I think I brought it on the podcast, and I talked about how it didn't fit, how sometimes knits just don't work out. And I love the pattern. One thing that I know I did was that I just knit it too long. And a lot of people gave me great suggestions on how to fix it. And I definitely could have. I could have fixed it. But then I tried it on again, and I just realized it was, not only was it too long, it was like too big up here. Like it needed to be a smaller size. And so I just didn't want to make it work. And I decided to knit another sweater with it. So this is a brand new pattern, actually. I don't think it's been out very long. I actually think this is the front. I can see the short rows. That's why I keep flipping them around. That's how I know it's the back and the front. Let me pull it over here. So this is by Savory Knitting. It's called the Camp Pullover, just fitting in with my camp theme for life. And I completely unraveled that gray sweater and just knit this one instead. I was unraveling it, and my mom said something. She's like, what are you doing? She's like, you can't just make that sweater work. And here's the thing is that I am very much like a product knitter. Like I want to have something that I'll wear and use. And so like it really doesn't bother me to just like completely unravel something and knit it again. Like I would rather do that than have something that I'm never going to wear. So this is a very simple top-down raglan, and you can see along the raglan there are some yarn overs and some slipped stitches to just like create this really nice detail. So This has just been really enjoyable to knit, and I'll have enough yarn. There were some areas that I couldn't unravel from that sweater just because of the split hem, like it wasn't going to work. But I was able to save most of the yarn from that sweater, and it won't even matter because I'll have enough yarn. Even though like I did waste a little bit, I'll still have enough yarn to finish this sweater. But you can see it's kind of like, you know, you can tell it's been knit before. I didn't block it again after I like unwound it. I did not have the bandwidth to do that. So it'll be fine. I know some people are like big proponents of if you frog a sweater, you should block the yarn or like steam it to get the kinks out, but I don't think it matters. And this pattern has just been lovely to knit. It like knit up so fast. It's on size 8 needles because it's a worsted weight pattern. And I haven't knit a lot on size anything like bigger than a size 6 lately. So it's been so lovely to just like knit something so fast. And it's great that it's knitting up so fast because did I set a deadline to take this on another trip? Yes, I did. So, but this is the only thing I told myself that I was making for this trip. Like this was it. And I still have a few weeks, like 3 weeks before we go. So this will like definitely be done this like in a week. She'll be done because this sleeves don't take that long to knit, especially on circulars. So yeah, I don't have a lot to say about this pattern other than I did have to like pay attention. I could have just like memorized the repeats for the raglan, but I just decided to like neurotically follow the pattern for this instead. And it knit up pretty fast. I'm really excited to have this because I love this yarn. I feel like this gray is so nice and neutral, and it's not cool or warm. It's just like a very neutral gray. And I'm excited to take this yarn on that trip again and actually get to wear it in a sweater. Yeah, I have no qualms about reknitting a sweater if I love the yarn. It just doesn't bother me. I actually have a cardigan. I don't think I ever showed it on the podcast. I don't think I had the podcast when I made it, but it's this gorgeous red. It was by Quince & Co. It's like an alpaca wool blend, so it has kind of a halo, and it's just a really like warm, it's like between like warm and cool. So just a really like gorgeous, like heather dimensional red. And I knit this pattern for a cardigan that had a lace panel in the back, and it was so beautiful. And I had wanted to knit it forever. And that yarn, just like the halo on it, kind of like closed up the lace pattern a little bit. And it was also just like a little bit too unstructured, like because alpaca has a lot of drape, and it just didn't work in that pattern. But I love the yarn, so I really would like to unravel that cardigan and make like a really just like a simple pullover with it. Maybe this pattern actually. So yes, if you finish a sweater and you don't like it and you realize you need to unravel it, my advice is to put it aside for a little while. Like let the wound scab over and then like come back to it a couple months later, and it doesn't hurt as much. Because if you finish knitting it and you realize it doesn't like fit, if you unraveled it right then and there, it would hurt a lot, because the amount of time and effort that you put into it is, more top of mind than it will be in a couple of months. And it just hurts more, like remembering how much time you spent / wasted knitting a sweater that doesn't fit. But like after a couple months, it honestly feels good. And it's like you get free yarn out of it. And yeah, this is your sign to unravel that sweater, unravel that thing that doesn't fit, and knit it again. So between the last podcast and this podcast, I did buy a tiny bit of yarn. I only have some of it with me. So I went to River Colors. I think they had a sale. That's my local yarn store in Cleveland. They have a great online shop too, by the way. They have a ton of Spin Cycle. If you're ever looking for Spin Cycle, I know a lot of people buy that online. They have a ton of Spin Cycle. But I think they were having a sale in the spring. It was like 10% off or 20% off. Anyway, I went with my mom, and I did buy a lot of yarn. I bought that Mondim that I have already knit into socks. And I picked up some other things. So the first thing I picked up was some tuku wool. And I have had my eyes on this color for a long time because I love purple. That was my favorite color growing up. And honestly, I think I still like purple. All of the colors that I like are coincidentally like colors that like go with my complexion and hair, which is nice that I'm like drawn to colors that look good on me. And I've wanted to pick up this color for a long time. So tuku wool, this is their sock base. So it's like very toothy wool, but then it has like 20% nylon in it, or it's polyamide. So it gives it like a little bit more durability as a sock yarn. And they say it's fingering weight, but it's definitely more of a sport weight, I would say. I don't know. It's hard. I haven't actually knit up with it. I'm just saying that based on like how it appears. But also it says for 50 grams, it's 160 meters. So that's like what, 170 yards. So that equals out to like closer to like sport weight. So yeah, what are the colors on this? This one is called, actually, there's no name on it. I lied. I can't tell you what it is. This one says Runo. And I don't know what this one is, but yeah, I'd love to knit like some sport weight socks with these. Again, the only reason I probably haven't is just because it's hot right now. But for the winter time, I think these would be like lovely socks. I think I'll do the actual sock in this color, the purple color, and then do heel, toes, and cuffs in this color, because I think that's the only way I would have enough yarn is if I did the heels, toes, and cuffs in a contrasting color, and make them like a little bit shorter. So yeah, I'm super excited to knit a pair of socks out of these because, again, these are non-superwash wool, which is what I'm trying to knit more of my socks in. Next thing that I bought was also from River Colors. It's kind of a lot to hold up. So back when I was on my Lopapesa kick, and let me remind you all, I was on a Lopapesa kick because I was unexpectedly called to work in Iceland for a month and I didn't have a culturally appropriate sweater to wear there, which in Iceland, their traditional sweater is a Lopapesa. And so I felt like I needed to knit some just in case something like that would ever happen again. And so I did knit one. I'm looking at the half-finished one that I talked about on the last podcast that I haven't finished. So naturally, I did buy yarn to knit another one. And these are the colors that I picked out. So there are a lot of patterns made for Icelandic wool to knit a Lopapesa with, because Lopi is an Icelandic yarn brand and they make a ton of patterns, and they make a lot of like traditional and modern like Icelandic knitting patterns. And so the pattern that I was knitting was called the Raderi sweater. And so I got yarn to knit another one. And I got yarn that was not Lopi yarn because, I don't know, they're having like supply chain issues and I couldn't actually get like the Lopi yarn. They make two weights. They make like a worsted weight and a bulky weight. And I really wanted to make one with a bulky weight yarn, but I couldn't find the colors at the time that I was like buying this yarn. There were so many that were out of stock. And I think that's just like a carryover, like pandemic continuing supply chain issue. So I bought my favorite yarn, Peace Fleece. I actually knit an entire cardigan in this sweater. And I actually don't wear that cardigan that much, and I might just unwind it and knit like a pullover because I do really like this color, and I feel like this like looks really good with my complexion. At least that's what I would like to think. So these three colors are going to be like the yoke colors. So I was trying to go with like neutral colors, but then a pop. And these two are the would be like the body. So I don't know if I totally have enough of this yarn to do it, but we're gonna go for it. I love Peace Fleece. It's super affordable. This is a 100 gram skein and it has 200 yards in it. So I think these are like $11 a piece. So you can knit a sweater very inexpensively. It is scratchier wool. It has like 20% mohair in it. Yeah, it's 75% rambouillet and 25% mohair. So it has like a lovely halo, and all of the colors are super heathered and dimensional. And I've knit so many sweaters, actually just cardigans in this. I've knit so many cardigans, and it just like really holds its shape. And it just like every cardigan that I've knit with this has not a single pill on it, because it is like tooth-earable. It's hard, like hardy yarn, but it also just wears so well. So yeah, I'm really excited to knit this. My next sweater, I did buy yarn for another sweater. And it's from Knitting for Olive. And I really want to knit that sweater first, but as soon as I'm done with that one, I'm going to knit this one because I love these colors. Like, I think this is going to be such a beautiful pullover. Just with this pop, it'll be really classic. But yeah, I guess I can talk about like life updates. There's been just like a lot of things that have happened. I feel like every time I get on here, I have a new job to tell you about, but this one is like a more permanent job that is totally remote, and I'm super excited because I've wanted a remote job for a long time so that I can travel more. And I'm actually taking a trip in just a couple of weeks, although I might have already taken it by the time we get back here. By the time this podcast is posted, I'm going to Oktoberfest for a couple of days, and then I'm road tripping through the Alsace region of France, so the very German area of France. I'm very excited about that. And then I'm working remotely in the French Alps, in a town in the French Alps for a week. And I'm going to see the Matterhorn. We have a couple days planned in Zermatt, and I'm so excited. Last fall, I went on a trip to the Alps, and it was kind of, it wasn't necessarily planned out that we wanted to go to the Alps. I went with my friend Meg, and I had another friend who was working remotely at the time in a French alpine town, and we went and stayed with him. And so the point of that was that it was just a free place to stay, not like we really wanted to go to that area. And I ended up loving the Alps so much, and I just really wanted to go back. And I'm so excited to get to do that and spend a whole week there. And I really want to see the Matterhorn. The Matterhorn is like a very, it's a peak in the Swiss Alps, and it kind of looks like a pyramid. It kind of has like a very distinctive curve at the top. And there's a town that sits at the bottom of it called Zermatt. And you can't drive your car up there. You have to take a tram or a bus just because they don't want the area to be polluted, or they want to keep it like really nice. So I'm really excited to see the Matterhorn. I've wanted to see it for a little over a year now. I know, crazy. I had to wait a whole year to see it, but I'm so excited. I'm also very excited to go to Oktoberfest. That's, something that, a lot of people talk about wanting to go to, and I'm excited to get to experience it with my friends. So that's coming up, and I'm very pleasantly surprised that the euro is very comparable to the dollar. I think it's almost equal. I think it actually was equal to a euro. The dollar was equal to a euro just the other day. And I bought not a lot, just like a little bit of yarn from Knitting for Olive. That's a yarn company that's based in Copenhagen. And a lot of US yarn shops carry it, but if you look at the price in euros, like it's a very inexpensive yarn. For like a skein, it's usually maybe like €6, and it comes in so many colors. And it's just like a non-superwash merino fingering weight yarn. And they also have a ton of colors of mohair. And so it's very inexpensive, but once it gets imported into the US, I mean, it makes sense that shops have to like mark it up a little bit. But it becomes less cost effective to buy it in the States. And so now that the euro and the dollar were equal, it was super cheap to actually just like buy it, because there was no exchange rate that you had to worry about like losing money with. And so I just bought some straight from their shop. I bought some rust colored yarn, like the mohair and the fingering weight. So I'm super excited to knit a sweater in that, because I don't have any orange sweaters, and that color actually looks really nice on me, but I stray away from it because I just feel like redheads aren't supposed to wear orange, but I decided to go for it. And I think I'm going to knit. I can't decide. I now am just realizing there's another sweater that I knit that I didn't show on the podcast. I knit it was a petite knits pattern. I think it was a Louvre sweater, and I knit it with this super like dark blue, like dark teal yarn. It was like almost black, and I knit it with like the same color mohair, and I love that sweater. And so I would like to knit something similar with this yarn, probably like a petite knit sweater. So I'm super excited to get that yarn, and I'm excited to take it with me on my trip because those patterns are they're usually pretty simple. There won't be any color work. So that's why this sweater is going to sit on the back burners while I knit that one. But yes, I'm so excited to be traveling again. I guess the only other things that I have to share, I bought a laptop. That's very exciting. I bought a MacBook Pro. I've been changed from a PC user. And if you're out there pondering whether you should get a MacBook or a PC, just get the MacBook. The chips that they put in them are so much better than anything you're getting in a PC right now, and it'll last you so much longer, and you should just buy it, even if it is a little bit more money. So I'm still like sitting in the glow of my new MacBook and enjoying playing with it, because I haven't actually paid the credit card bill for that one yet. Another pro tip is check your credit card benefits before you like make a big purchase like that, because my credit card offers an additional year of a manufacturer's warranty when you buy something that has a manufacturer's warranty. So for Apple products, you get a year. At least on laptops, you get an extra year. You get a year of the manufacturer's warranty. And then because I bought it with my credit card, I get another year on top of that from my credit card. If you buy something through Costco, they also usually give you an extra year of warranty. So yeah, if you're making a big purchase like that, check that out. Other than that, summer's winding down and I'm settling into my new job. And I'm also finishing out a co-op that I had started before I accepted this job. So I'm kind of working a lot right now. And it's a busy season of life. And yeah, that's all I've got for you. Thank you so much for coming back. I know it's been a minute since I've popped on here. So every time I take a couple months of a hiatus and people still continue to come back and watch, I'm always so humbled and thankful. But that's all I've got for you today, knitters, makers, sewers. If you're a sewer, I'm glad that you finally got some sewing content out of this podcast. But yes, hopefully next podcast I'll have a couple more sweaters to show you and maybe another quilt. We'll see. We'll see what's going on. Thanks for being here.